In this video, we're talking purely about driving impressions. It's going to get pretty nerdy with the Defender. It's going to be kind of, you know, maybe I'll repeat myself, but this is a really important video if you're interested in driving a Defender. Now, we're not getting into the off-road characteristics of the car in this video. We did have the car off-roading a couple days ago, and so I have a whole nother video talking about terrain response and all the off-road stuff. It was just so much, we needed a full video. Anyway, the car sat out overnight. We're at my house now, and it got cold. It was like 8 degrees Fahrenheit last night. Now it's warmed up. It's in the 40s, I think. But let's do a cold start. Starts up really quick, and the revs go pretty high too. It shoots up like 2,000 RPM on the startup and then comes down. All JLR products always do this. I find it super interesting. And a really high high idle cold starts up at the almost 1,700 RPM just sitting there. So interestingly about the cold start, the engine sits in, I'm going to put my heated seat and heated steering wheel on. The engine sits in the cold range, and then it warms up really fast. And I think the temperature sensor given here on the display is not really a temperature sensor. Also, like every other JLR, it does the high idle and then just comes right off of it. Interestingly, when you're in high idle and you put it in drive, which I typically don't do, I usually give the engine, 10-15 seconds just to get the fluids moving before I drive. It stays at high idle, and then when you lift off the brake pedal, engages the torque converter and drops the revs. Let's go for a drive into reverse. Engine's cold, and we're going to be doing some neighborhood driving. This is a mild hybrid engine, so we need to talk about what that is, because mild hybrid can classify as many different kinds of extra propulsion or help. And in the case of this car, you have a electrically driven supercharger that feeds the turbo. Really, it's just a turbocharger with an electric motor on it, but since it's not exhaust driven, it's a supercharger. And what that does is it feeds boost into the big turbo and then should delay the lag, or should decrease the lag. Now, driving around town is actually where I like this car the least, and we are definitely going to talk about that. Engine at cold drives the same. Some cars shift really weird when everything's frozen. This car, you wouldn't even know that you're driving it differently when the engine's cold. So let me tell you about my gripe with this car around town from a engine standpoint, and it's all down to throttle mapping. And so when you first get into the throttle, like, nothing happens. And then if you just push it a little bit more, the car's like, oh my God, and it just boosts up to the moon and you're off. It's really hard to do like a moderate acceleration smoothly. It's either too little or too much. And I had this problem for like the first 2 days. And then I called my friend Ben, who's also been on this channel. Ben used to work for Land Rover, and I was like, what's up with this new Land Rover inline 6? Like, it's kind of lumpy. Like, it's like nothing, and then boom, you get all the torque. Like, it certainly has enough power to move this thing around. And basically he just said you got to be patient with it. So you got to put your foot down and then just wait, and then it boosts up real slowly and nicely. So once I learned that, like right now I've selected my throttle, I haven't moved my foot, and then it gave it more and more. You just learn to drive it that way, and you got to be slow with it. It's a Defender. It's not an instantaneous vehicle. Now, I thought this was interesting because most mild hybrids give you an EV-like instantaneous driving characteristic. Not the case here. This is very much put your foot down, wait a second, and then it boosts up and goes. So I thought that was kind of neat. And it's a non-issue now, but it took me hundreds of miles of driving and multiple days to figure that out. And once Ben's like, just put your foot down and pause, then I'm like, oh, it just takes a second for it to go. Other than that, the seating position around town, again, we're going to do 3 sections in this video, which is a town, a mountain, and highway drive. And so we're in the town in Fort Collins, Colorado. It is great to drive around town. Initially, I felt the steering wheel was too big, but now after off-roading it, I actually like that because it was really light and easy to maneuver around off-road, the steering, that is. So I can give up on the steering wheel size being so big. But we have to talk about the old Defender when we're talking about this car, because it's not is it a Defender? I don't know. It's a modern interpretation of a Defender using modern JLR stuff. Personally, I love it. I actually am very serious about ordering one of these as a long-term tester. Hopefully you guys enjoy the Defender content. I'd love to make more. So much so that I want to buy one for us to make videos with. So yeah, it's definitely utilitarian, but it also drives better than the Land Rover Discovery, I think. The seating position's awesome. The view around the whole car is really great. This B-pillar's a little big here to the left of me, but it's got good blind spot monitoring, and the mirrors are very narrow but tall. But again, blind spot monitoring makes up for that. Now, I personally am not sure how I would feel if this one had the ladder and box accessories on the side. I really think that could get in the way of vision. You know, I watch a YouTube channel called Harry's Garage. I'm sure if you're watching this video, you're familiar. Harry does some of the best car reviews, I think. Previous Evo magazine, real solid dude. And he had the exact same Spec Defender as I have here, but his had the accessories. And he's one of the few people that I trust his opinion on. And he said, yeah, the view out the back was really quite poor. So, out the side mirrors, I should say. Now out the back, it's pretty bad actually. So you get like a spare tire back there, and the glass gets dirty, and of course you can wash everything here. But what I've been doing this week is I've been using the camera mounted on the roof of the car. Now I've driven other cars with the rear view mirror turning into a camera, and I typically do not like them at all. I think they're really silly and it's hard to gauge. In this application, it might be the way it's mounted, it might be just that we're in a bigger car. This backup camera really helps just keeping it on all the time. I know exactly what's going on around the car, really nice wide field of view. I like that a lot here. Yeah, so the engine's not quite warmed up, but it's on its way to getting there. So like here, you have to be really patient for the car to get up and go, otherwise it'll overboost itself on that acceleration. Now there's a few different driving modes you can put the car in. It just starts up in normal, you know, on-road mode in drive. I can pull the shifter to the left and engage S, which is sport shifting, and then of course I can shift it manually. And just like every JLR product, it is shifting the correct direction. You push forward to downshift and pull back to upshift. That's how it should be. So I really like that. And I also like the noise this car makes around town. Around town, you're never going above 2,500 RPM, 3,000, just cruising, but it kind of sounds like a diesel, this inline six. I really like the way this car sounds, the auditory notions. Now I will say this car does have a little bit of wind noise. I'm not sure if it's this particular car or just all Defenders, and it's specifically right here on the A pillar. I've heard other owners complain about this. I'm in some of the Defender owners groups on Facebook and forums, and I know that they were some recall or something was going on with the A pillar where people were fixing them, and some people were like, it's a boxy car, it's going to make noise. But I owned a Range Rover that's also equally boxy, and that made no noise, so I don't necessarily buy that argument. But you know, specifically driving this car around town is great. Once you get over the throttle delay thing and you just cruise around like this in normal terrain response and just get in and drive, oh, it's super comfortable. It doesn't give you the Range Rover like floating experience. It's a little firmer than the Range Rover, but it's kind of what you want. It gives you a utilitarian feeling, but it pampers you enough. This one that we're in, this Spec, I should say, is a inline six P400, which is 396 horsepower, somewhere around there. It's 400 PS. And just over 400 pound-feet of torque. Plenty of power, I think, for getting around town. You kind of have to go out of your way to get on it. And it makes a good case for the 4-cylinder, actually, because I feel like this is more power than most would need. But the problem for me with the 4-cylinder is, one, reliability. I'm not so sure I want that thing in boost all the time, working hard, especially up here in Colorado at altitude. And then also, I'm not totally sold on the noise of that 4-cylinder. I've driven that engine in other products like the Evoque and a Discovery 2 or whatever they call the little ones. And yeah, it just was not about that engine at all. Didn't like the refinement. So here in the inline six, it's a smooth engine naturally, but it gives you a good flare. Now it does have auto start stop, and I actually really like auto start stop here. It shuts off, you don't feel anything, and it turns on with a belt driven starter motor, so it doesn't use the same traditional starter like on the initial startup. And we just ran over a tumbleweed there. It's really windy out today here in northern Colorado. And yeah, so it's not like, I just had a Mercedes inline six. This isn't as smooth. However, at the top revs, which we'll find out here going up in the canyons, it's actually very smooth at top RPM. So I'm excited to see how this car drives, because I think it will actually surprise us up in the hills. And you know, we take every car regardless of what they are in the town, on the canyons, or the racetrack, depending on the type of car, and also on the highway, because these are the three main environments I drive cars in, and this is where I test them. So let's head up into the canyons now that we've learned it's a fantastic car around town. It has tons of sensors to help you out, and yeah, just a really easy daily driver, good ride height position for getting in and out of the vehicle. We'll have more content review on the car itself, but driving wise around town really doesn't get much better. Maybe an electric car would be the next thing up. But do you hear that wind noise right here? That's all coming from this A-pillar, and everything's closed and rolled up, so I'm not totally sure what's going on there. Off to the canyons. As we are approaching the canyons, I've noticed a ton of like upper trim wind noise, way more than like we noticed in town with the A-pillar. This was across the whole, like where the roof sits on the windshield. I thought that was pretty interesting. Anyway, that could just be, this is a very early production car, I think like a January 2020. It might even be pre-production. These press cars just go through so much. So we're in normal terrain response, comfort program. I'm gonna put the shifter to the left in S, and we're gonna see what the car does in normal mode. So getting into a corner, this is the first time I'm driving it hard, genuinely. First off, the lack of body roll is impressive. Have some things rolling around on the dash here we may need to take care of. Tons of torque. The body control, what? It's not rolling around massively. How is that possible? The brake pedal feels great. The brakes are right there where you want them. Look at that big power coming out of here. It's actually, is it fun? Can I say that? Here we go. Look at the power coming out of here. 5,000 RPM. This thing moves. And the shifts are pretty quick too. What? Look at the power coming out of the corners. And just the control. It's like I'm hustling this thing. Actually, is that okay to do in a Defender? Is it designed for this? No, I don't know. JLRs always drive really well. Damn. A little bit of ABS feedback under braking there. We're actually hustling this thing pretty quick, but it feels so good. All right, so there's traction control coming on. I felt it there. Didn't want us to get too spicy. But look at the power. Yeah, definitely here's where you want the 6-cylinder. The 4-cylinder would be a little bit too underpowered. I think this feels right. And it's just locking itself and riding the torque curve, because I'm hitting the kickdown switch and it's not going all the way down. There it goes. That was the throttle thing. So I gave it a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then it boosted more than I was hoping for. So that was, yeah, the pedal mapping is still lumpy, even when you're driving it hard. And it's a little bit weird on the mid-corner. But you can just put your foot down like that and just ride that torque wave. And yeah, it moves. Okay, so I'm blown away, first of all. Secondly, there's some things we can do here in the terrain response. I can shift it manually, of course, I should mention, and it will upshift at redline. Look, so, and then it upshifts, even though I've selected manual mode. But if I go into terrain response, I can customize now my own settings, configurable. So here I think you can name them as well. I don't know how many you can have, but I think 5 or 6. So I've put this one in like full, a racy mode. I got differentials in auto. I got powertrain in responsive, steering in heavy. Although typically I don't like heavy steering, it's still not heavy. I have traction control to give me more wheel spin. So this is like full custom configurable terrain response. Also, when you're in this setting and you just drive around in drive, it's so much more responsive. Like I'm just touching the pedal and it just leaps. When I put it over into S, now it locks it in manual mode. So now I can shift with the shifter the correct direction, by the way, which is really nice. And it's actually like super dynamic. Now I haven't tried this particular setting driving aggressively. The steering is noticeably heavier. So I do notice a change there. And shifting manually is nice. No paddle shifters and none available on the Defender across the lineup. I think that's fine. You don't need them. You have a bicyclist here. Go around on the outside and foot down. Riding that third gear torque wave. Yeah, it just makes so much torque down at like 2,800 RPM. There's no need to even downshift. I can hear the brake pedal kicking on just for a little bit of, I guess, ESP intervention. There we go, foot hard down. It's really good. It's really good. This is the most impressive part about the Defender. You know, I expected it to be good off-road. It exceeded my expectations because it was good. The downshifts take a while, but that's okay. Did we just get power on oversteer coming out of that corner a little bit? It definitely was power on neutral. We're just running at 5,500, 6,000 RPM. Wow, we were getting wheel spin coming out of there. You could hear the engine whoop, 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 whoop. That was the ESP cutting back on power. What a nice drivetrain too. This engine at high RPM, super, super fruity. Sounds great. Did we just find a Defender race truck? What? This is truly impressive. So like I was saying, it was exceeded expectations off-road, but I knew it was going to be good. I've off-roaded modern Range Rovers. I've owned a modern Range Rover. I know they're supposed to be good, and they are. So that was as expected. Here, its performance on-road far exceeds my Range Rover and is actually really fun. Here we go, foot hard down. Makes a great noise. Yeah, you got to get the 6-cylinder though. Up here, climbing these mountains, definitely got to go for the 6-cylinder. It's a screamer. All right, well, I think as we typically do in the canyon section, I'm just gonna drive. You join me, and you can skip to the highway section if you want, but we're just going for a spirited Sunday morning blast here. Or Sunday afternoon, I guess. Yeah, afternoon. Feels like morning. Up here on the nice canyons. Wind noise, though, is getting to me. That's annoying. Right here on the A-pillar, it's definitely a little windier than I would have expected. But let's continue going for a little canyon drive. especially through the wet stuff through here. See if it'll let us have some more wheel slip, because definitely when you get it full lean into a corner, it starts to pull back a little bit. Very progressive though. My old Range Rover would just lock the brakes on and stop it. This is definitely a better calibration of traction control. Best section of the road, but also bikers. Definitely don't want to run over any of those guys. Let's go big power down the best part. Here we go. Freaking shreds! I mean, certainly the numbers aren't massive here on the screen. You know, we just had the, what did we have up here? A C8 Corvette. Really, that was big numbers for sure. And but this is fun. This is like you're hustling around a big SUV, and you really got to think about your weight transfer. But seriously, the body roll is impressively low. Just the whole behavior is so good. Coming through on snow and ice, get our braking done early because of it. We don't want to become flying through here. Yeah, it's slippery, that's for sure. But it's so progressive in its calibration. So here's the hill climb section. And big power out. Yeah, 4-wheel spin there, baby. Hustle this thing if you want. Don't go into our lane, Mitsubishi. Dang, that sketches me out because this is pretty icy through here. And big power. We're just ice skating in the Defender. So freaking neat. So neat. And power down. Oversteer in a Range Rover, sorry, Land Rover Defender. We just got power on oversteer. What? And there again, what a beautiful view we are always greeted with at the top of Wrist Canyon. And what a machine this turned out to be in terms of sporty driving. Man, that is seriously an impressive team that built this car. The fact that it can go over that mountain, which we did take it up over that mountain the other day. It can go over that mountain with zero fuss, super easy. It's got all the stuff. And then you can shred it up a road like this, and it sounds so good. This inline 6 is the perfect pairing, the P400. Although the diesel would be really nice for, like, if I was to buy one, I'd like a diesel, but we don't get them here in the US. So that leaves me with the P400. And I am just thrilled with the performance. It is unbelievably good, and the calibration, the body roll, the inputs, it's just right on point. You know, not a sports car, but for what it is. And that is the end of our Canyon Drive section. I hope you enjoyed that. We are going to go jump on the highway, and we will see you, I guess, on the highway. I got to talk about some of the driver assistance stuff. Now you join us out on the highway in the Defender, and we're up to about 70 miles per hour cruising. So far, so good. You know, it's cold today. It's 8 degrees out. This is a different day from when I filmed the Canyon Drive. And the cold start, I'll let you listen to it now, but it started right up. Pretty amazing. Take a look. It is about 10 degrees outside, maybe a little bit less. Let's do a cold start. 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Starts right up. Pretty high cold start cycle. Revs up to about 1700 RPM. Nice and smooth up here. You can really tell this thing just does not care about the cold. Yep. Sounds really good too. Like this car doesn't even care about temperature. Anyway, cruising along on adaptive cruise control. So what this will do is keep a distance to the car in front of me. Looks like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 different distance settings, which is nice, and you can deactivate adaptive just to go to normal cruise control. That's really nice. I like that feature. And then it also has not lane centering, unfortunately, but it does have lane departure pushing you in, but right now it's not working. It was working just a few minutes ago, and I was testing it out, and I was hitting the lines and seeing how aggressively it would push us back in. Let's just see if it's on right now. And the answer is no. And it pushes you back in, and it works fine. It's pretty aggressive when it pushes you, but it gets the job done. But now I can't turn it back on, so I think I must have bricked something because I hit too many lines. Anyway, funny Land Rover problem there. I do have to report on it, of course. It's a good highway cruiser. I gotta say, this thing's such a tank. It's so heavy. The alignment seems to be great because I haven't really had to touch the wheel much. It just goes where you have it pointed. Really nice truck for cruising. I will say, though, I think I commented on it earlier, the problem is the wind noise. And like I said earlier as well, I don't think it's because of the shape. I've owned Range Rovers that have no wind noise, and I don't know if it's just because this car's an early production build or it's a press vehicle and it's just had the nuts kicked off of it, basically. But you know, I can definitely hear rattle or a little wind noise coming from the right behind this camera, and also another one coming from the A-pillar here. And that's sort of unacceptable for this kind of car. So could be that this is just an early one and it's not the case for a newer one. Unfortunately, this is the only one I get to test right now, so that's what I have to say, is the wind noise is not the best. Beautiful sunrise here in northern Colorado. Just crossed into Colorado from Wyoming, and the revs at 70 miles per hour are at about 1700, 1650. Really tall 8th gear on this thing, which is nice. 7 degrees outside, real chilly. But I gotta say, the Land Rover does a great job of insulating. The doors are nice and warm, which is interesting because in many cars that I test, when it's really cold outside, you really get a cold door. Not so much as the case here. I definitely feel it on the painted sections, but that could also just be because this sat outside overnight. But yeah, the door's nice and warm. I'm still waking up, if you can't tell, but I absolutely love putting the miles on this thing. It's definitely a cruiser. You could go across the country in this, no problem. My biggest ask and want and desire, though, is active lane centering. There's a blank button here on the steering wheel. It's got all the sensors for it. Just make it stay in the middle of its lane, just with some basic, level 2 driver assistance. That would just take so much fatigue away on a long trip. Of course, you'd still have to pay attention. It wouldn't be driverless. I don't even want that. I just want it to stay in the middle of the lane. Anyway, yeah, great cruiser. Sound system's not the best on this, by the way. This one's the 400-watt system. I would definitely upgrade if you're into audio. The bass kind of blows out when you really turn up the volume. I think I may have mentioned that as well. Not sure, but yeah, I think that concludes our city, mountain, and highway drive. Let us know if you like this style of video. I think it's a great way to evaluate a car on different types of terrain, and really hope you enjoyed the Defender as much as I have, because this is a truly special vehicle, exceptionally well engineered. The driving dynamics are insane on road and off, and everything just works so well. And seriously, aside from a couple niggles, it's been fairly reliable during my week with it, so it's no major issues, I should say. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.